fit in more brunch.
Exactly. Hence why he looks like a brick wall.
There was a lot of singing.
That's their fucking job.
Yeah, this is their job.
That's what they're there for.
Guys starting to move on our position.
Copy, we're getting a buildup of activity here too.
Yeah, I definitely see weapons at this point.
Yeah, we have definite massing.
Well, I know at the boot camps, this movie, which involved kind of sharing meals, doing laundry, etc., you took on a leadership role to match Eric's role within the boot camp. Was that something that came naturally to you? Did it feel strange? Have you always felt more like a leadery person?
It's actually not really my my natural instinct to lead. I probably do actually say I'm more of a follower, if I'm being completely honest. But
Great leader right here.
That's very sweet. But I was so honoured to have that role. I'm really grateful that I got to work with like the greatest group of guys I could hope to work with. I think any leader is only as good as the sort of people that are prepared to kind of like follow them. And there was a great culture of leadership within our group as well. There were like a lot of I think people with great leadership qualities within the group, which meant that, you know, I was just kind of like leaning on that as much as anything else.
I just want to say on his behalf, great leader right here. Him, Charles Milton, Joseph Quinn, they instantly stepped up in those positions really quickly and set an example for the rest of our cast to set a standard, a great standard that we had to uphold. His true to life counterpart, he did an amazing, that's an understatement to say, an amazing job representing that leadership position. I got the pleasure of meeting him recently, and I can tell you that Will Poulter did an amazing job representing him. Yes.
Love, bro. Thank you.
Okay. That's that new guy energy.
One of the main things that Alex and Ray kind of focused on for a lot of the other characters, a lot of the other guys, was instilling this sort of Navy SEAL stoicism. Our natural reaction as actors when you have explosions going off and gunfire and things like that is to play the stakes and to play the emotion, play the fear, play the everything. Whereas the fact that I was a newcomer, a bit more green and less experienced with these kind of things, these kind of traumatic experiences, it meant that I was kind of able to lean into those things a little bit more. Those natural inclinations, which I suppose in a way made my job a little bit more. I didn't have to worry about sort of retraining my brain into playing the stoicism. You know, these guys kind of did.
Redman 08 is profane. We're seeing activity converging to your north and south.
This is Frogman 6 Romeo. We need to evac at our last known position.
We have severely wounded. Who's the severely wounded?
It's not you.
Is it me? Who is it?
No, it's not you.
Farrah, it must have been quite a strange feeling being directed by the person you're actually playing. What was that relationship like with Ray? Like, how did that feel?
Strange feelings is an interesting way to put it. It's new to me completely, in that sense of strange because it's new. Yes, that's an interesting way. I was very grateful. You know, as much as I felt pressure, and you know, earlier, if we were shooting it right now, I'll tell you it's very scary. In hindsight, I was grateful to have him there throughout the whole process. You know, a lot of the gentlemen, they would meet their true to life counterpart. Sometimes they're only on Zoom, sometimes only on phone calls, sometimes lucky enough come to set for a good few days, maybe a week if so. But my guy was behind the camera throughout the whole process, even before. You know, he was also our instructor for Bootcamp because he was also a Bud's instructor. I had a lot of pressure on my shoulders, but I was very grateful that I had him with me. There left no room of improv. Because first and foremost, I felt like that would be disrespectful, but also that I didn't need to, because he was right there, and any microscopic detail that I wanted to accomplish, he was open to it.
Yeah, it's obviously really strange for me to say it was fine. It would be wrong or lying. I try to detach myself from that. I wear multiple hats. There's a director hat, training, a few different caps I wore, but I would say I try to detach myself as much as possible and treat him like everyone else. I knew there was components he was gonna have to know about me. I didn't expect him to sound like me or walk like me, so the expectations were minimum in that regards, but there was a lot of training, just like everyone else. There's a lot he needed to learn as a base knowledge level, which was most of the heavy lifting.
Because you led them in boot camp, right, as well? Yeah. And how was that experience like? Just
it was amazing. I was jealous. I wish I could be. It was fun. I gave them a lot of autonomy and ownership in that, and so watching them do their thing and help each other out, bringing levity to some serious scenes, and that, in a weird way, was also an objective of mine for them to experience something that was theirs as well.
Yeah, seeing them all at the premiere, it seems like they still have this real like bond and like camaraderie, like running into each other, hugging each other, which is nice.
Jealous.
He's back. That's the 4th time he's done that.
Is he peeking or probing?
Speaking with serious intent to probe.
Cosmo, I was going to say, in the first scenes of the movie, you're like intensely focused on the targets. You're lying down comfortably, sweat dripping down your face. Can you talk me through like getting into the mindset for that scene? Was it as intense and focused as it felt like watching?
Well, it probably wasn't as intense and focused as it felt like watching. They're just guys who have a specific, an occupationally specific objective. I guess it was a case for all of us of understanding their jobs as a unit and as individuals within that unit. And they have a specific mission objective, and the overall group's mission objective is comprised of smaller specialist objectives and leadership roles. And but yeah, I guess it was just a case of understanding those well enough to live them.
1 minute out!
You guys wanted the actors to feel like a sense of sensory overload filming this, and obviously there was very intense scenes, intense trainings. Like, how did you feel kind of putting them through these obstacles? And
That's their fucking job.
Yeah, this is their job.
That's what they're there for.
No, it goes back to I think what I was saying in the beginning is that all that is a source for them to pull from when acting. I can't put them in real combat. I don't have 6 months to put them what I went through. So it's a crash course on just exposure to these concepts of fear, burden of leadership, being concussed, being exhausted, and having to push past what your body think is not possible. So it's just principles and concepts that I wanted to expose them to, and that's all it really was. Something for them to draw back on to help their performances.
It was wild when it was so immersive that like your senses were actually like fully overcome, right? Like from a sound and
Well,
and sort of vision perspective.
It's not truly. My apologies.
No.
It's not truly answering your question, but yes, the sound overload that I had is specifically in the scene post IED, dragging him in. The scene where I unplug it. That as an actor in that scene, not even just as DeFaro in that scene, was a lot to deal with. You can. I hope audiences feel that same way when you hear so much in his earpiece. For me on that day, it was a lot. During that scene, they really were screaming, blah blah, just multiple stuff in my ear at once. And I didn't normally feel the overload, so yes, it was a lot.
There must have been like a real intense feeling as well, especially with like Joseph Quinn screaming. He's screaming in those scenes. Was that a lot like of an emotional weight as you were filming? Was that hard to combat through?
Yes, because he didn't really give me a break. I mean, I was closest with him, and whether that camera was on him or not, he was squeezing the hell out of my shoulder, So, but I was grateful to have that as such an amazing actor as Joseph Quinn, because it kept me in the scene. Any other actor, if there was, if we're shooting coverage like we did, they would, not just any other actors, but maybe there would be a chance that they wouldn't give it their all. And Joseph Quinn is the complete opposite and gave it his all, 110% every take.
Actors tend to want to go as far as they can with something. Like, it's slightly odd talking about the film in these terms because of the subject matter, but in some respects for an actor it's kind of a gift, because they get to work on something where they are truly exploring things about performance in an unusual way. You have an actor playing a role and their real counterpart at this moment of great trauma is standing a few feet away from them. That's an interesting space to be for a performer. I don't think we ever got any pushback from the actors. If anything, we got the opposite. They wanted to go as far and work as hard as they possibly could within this time frame. It was very, very committed, and again, it doesn't feel like the right word, but enthusiastic. It's hard to find the right words to attach this project because of some elements within it, but very, very committed.
It sort of was the first most applicable way I've ever heard of our job to be sort of applied, right? It was an actual real life sort of thing that we can do rather than just playing dress up. We could actually serve something much bigger than ourselves. And so to have the job and that responsibility, it's the first time I felt that my job was really a could be of value in such a massive way. So I wanted to be there to serve the story and be a part of it and help tell Ray and Elliot and all of their stories however I could.
Eyes on me and only me. Has anyone looked at you?
Claymore rocked me, dude.
2 minutes out! 2 minutes!
Where are you guys?
Look for the blood and the smoke! Multiple bad guys trying to get to our position.
I was reading that Alex and Ray said that attitude and a fire in the gut was the biggest thing they were looking for when casting for these roles. For the both of you, where do you think that comes from in you, and why do you think it was important for your roles?
I didn't know that was on their checklist. That's the first I've heard of it, actually.
Sorry, could you say it one more time?
They said the attitude and a fire in the gut.
Fire in the gut. I never heard that phrase before.
That's cool, though.
That's a nice phrase to put it. I bet Alex said that. That was, you know.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know, I can only speak on my personal experience with them, meeting them for the first time. But I got a pleasure to, you know, have a brunch really with Alex and Ray. We didn't really talk about the script too often when we were having that lunch. We were just really talking about, me and Ray were really just discussing our upbringing. First and foremost, I went to that meeting like 20 minutes early. Do that if you guys ever want to, you know, impress them. Go early. I was taught, you know, on time is late and early is on time. In all honesty, I mean, Ray told me himself it's because I showed up early, you know, and those are because, you know, we had a very similar upbringing. And also the challenge he brought up too as well, that how much of a challenge this would be for the actors, and that I loved it. I love a challenge. I love the struggle. I love the long takes. I love the long days. I love the extremely heavy backpack in between. I love passing out any chance I get. You know, I love the struggle, and he recognized that.
And also brunch early. I mean, you should just get to enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly right.
There you go. Fit in more brunch.
Exactly.
I just really want to do a good job, you know, and I think that we all did. Again, it makes so much sense when they said that. I remember them saying that about the casting process, and it makes a lot of sense because, you know, I've never been on a set where they've everyone involved was just so unbelievably committed to it, and we were all so motivated, and so it was an incredibly inspiring thing. You know, if you were having a day where you were feeling a little bit less motivated, then you were motivated then by the people you were surrounded by. So it was an incredibly kind of supportive set in that way.
You gotta get ready, man. It's gonna hurt. On my count. 1, 2, 3.
Call on Me at the start of the movie is like obviously a really funny and realistic portrayal of like a squadron being very much tapped into culture still. Did you all have like a song or a funny thing, like a TikTok you tapped into when you were living together in the hotel? Was there a thing that kept coming back?
That's funny.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
There was a lot of singing
Yes.
almost at all times. We were just saying like Zach Bryan was in pretty heavy rotation. Tommy Richmond was in pretty heavy rotation. We were also all staying together when the Kendrick Drake sort of back and forth started, so
in
that
the
was
early
kind of
days.
fun.
Yes.
Euphoria. I remember listening to Euphoria
We
with
would bump
you.
Euphoria. Yeah. Kendrick fans over here.
Exactly. Yeah. So there was quite a lot of music in circulation, and we'd also like play music virtually every time we rolled out to set, and Call on Me must have played 100 times.
Yes.
Every
We
so often
watched Hook.
We watched Hook. That's one of Cosmo's personal favourite movies.
Will.
And Will. Yeah. We would often sing Carry On, Wayward Son together. Again, we relied on levity a lot in terms of to kind of basically to stay sane, you know, because we'd be doing the same sort of section of the script for days at a time.
I read that Alex and Ray said there were some like really gruelling exercises you went on in training, but they didn't go into specifics. Was there a particularly gruelling exercise any of you remember?
The main one that he brought.
Yeah, he brought one that really punished us. Although it actually became quite a really fun exercise.
Yeah.
It's called Navy SEALs. Basically, it consists of essentially you do a push-up and then bring one knee to your chest, and then do another push-up, bring the other knee to your chest, and then do one more push-up, and then that's 1 rep. And then we would do 100 of those. He still does them, and
every day.
Hence why he looks, you know, like a brick wall. It's a good thing. You look massive, mate. But yeah, it's
Brick wall Jarvis.
Brick wall Jarvis. But yeah, that was pretty rough, especially those first few times. That was hard. I didn't think I'd make it through. How's it going?
Going well.
In all seriousness, watch something before having such an opinion. I can understand people are concerned about it. If you watched this and thought it was propaganda in that way, I don't know how to help you. I'd like them to be thoughtful. That's what I'd like. I'd like them to reflect on it. In America, more than here, there's a phrase which is "thank you for your service" is said quite often. It's said by politicians and news sort of broadcasters and members of the public standing in a line for coffee or whatever it is. And it's a fair sentiment because society does ask young people to go through incredible hardships in war. So it's correct that it's expressed, but I think it's also often expressed without really any understanding of what service might mean. And so reflecting on that, reflecting on what happens to soldiers and what happens to civilians caught up in the conflict, or civilians back home whose parent is serving in some conflict or another. And I just think it's helpful. I think it's healthy to think about those things.